Hey guys, there are some absolutely massive changes coming for Albion Online, and SBI just released the NDA Balance playtest patch notes. I'm going to go through them in this video, line by line. First, we have Arcane Stabs, little bit of a buff coming for Enigmatic, shield range increase from 5 meters to 6 meters, energy cost per ticks coming down from 6 to 5. This is a minuscule change, I think, and it's not really going to change too much for the meta, but it might cause it to see a little bit more play just because it's on here for the buffs list. Malevolent Locust is losing its resistance buff, which is insane to me, but now it's going to cleanse damage over time effects while inside the area. The cooldown is being increased, but as a compensation, they're increasing the amount of reduction for each IP. So higher IP locusts might be worth running now. Time Freeze is getting a little bit of a nerf. Great Arcane's not really loving that. Realistically, this is not going to change much, though. The half a second difference is not going to be whether or not you use Great Arcane in any of the situations where it was already being used. So I think that that's an okay change. Not really sure why they did that. Astral Staff is losing 1 meter radius on Starfall. I think this is going to hurt certain Brawl comps that use Astral Staff, but overall, I think it's not really going to make that much of a difference. Arcane Cleanse for all Arcane Staffs is getting increased by 3 seconds. I think this change is probably more massive than this 1 meter change on Astral Staff. This is an insane change. I think that 3 seconds for each of the different cleanses that you're using as Arcanes in your Zerg, I think is going to matter a lot over the course of fighting, and I think that people are going to notice that extra 3 seconds, even though it doesn't seem like that big of a change. Curse Sickle on Curse Stabs is getting a little bit of a buff, as well as Curse Tar getting a little bit of a nerf with their cooldowns swapping. I think that this is an overall okay change. Curse Sickle doesn't get enough love, and Curse Tar is already strong, so adding a little bit of cooldown doesn't really do much to it. I think it just serves to lower the amount of overall damage that it's doing for PvE players. I don't think that there's much of a difference for PvP or Zerg players. Demon Fang is getting what I would call a buff, but if this 20% total health loss over 3 seconds can't be cleansed off or gotten rid of with like Guardian Helm or something like that, this is actually a significant nerf because the amount of health that you're losing from before to now is going to be very drastically different. 20% of total health is way more than 180 most of the time. Yeah, that seems crazy to me. Ring of Death on Twin Slayers. Elapsed time before casting Recall Daggers is refunded. I think that this is just a functionality change more than anything. I don't think that this is going to cause Twin Slayers to like suddenly become good, and there's not many people who use this weapon in my opinion. Freezing Wind is getting an insane change. Frost Staff is losing a little bit of damage, sure, but the slow is going from 15% to 40% while inside the area, and if you're in it for even 1 second, you get rooted for 2.5, and you receive an additional 50 magic damage, which actually makes this damage increase total a buff if they get rooted. This is such a good change in my opinion. It does exactly what Froststaff wants to do in general, which is just slow people down, and rooting for 2.5 seconds at the end of that insane slow is actually a really big come up for Froststaffs. Permafrost Prism getting a slight change / nerf. Overall, I don't think that this is going to be noticeable. I think they're just kind of tuning the numbers, so to speak. Salvation Fallen Staff already max targets 10 to 20 is an outrageous change. I think that when I saw this, I was like, wow, that's crazy for 2 reasons, right? One, it's probably going to make it like harder to manage your healing sickness in really, really large scale fights, which is kind of annoying, but it is so worth it for the next line of text, which is now applies a damage immunity for 2 seconds and affected targets can't get another damage immunity for 5 seconds. That means that you're immune for 2 out of every 7 seconds. That's an insane change. If you're quick enough with the cast on Fallen Staff, that means that you could potentially save entire clumps from dying. Or if you precast at like a good enough angle, you can just save them from even ever getting hit. It is an outrageous change in my opinion, and I'm not even sure that that's going to go live. Nature Staffs also are going to get a similar target increase on base Nature Staff as well as Wild Staff from 10 to 20 and 10 to 15. I think that these are they're mostly PvE changes. I don't think that either of these weapons are really going to be brought to PvP situations, although Wild Staff being 20 target cap is pretty good. But maybe not good enough that you're going to bring it over Blight, because everybody loves Blight, right? Galantine Pair is seeing a little bit of, I'll say like a 5% overall damage increase. I'm not sure that that's enough to give it like the oomph that it really needs to like become meta, but enough people use it probably that they're happy about it. The people that do use Galantine Pair in that way are not going to be mad about that change, and everybody else is not going to care because Galantine Pair doesn't like get used in every single Zerg ever. It's not that kind of a meta weapon. Claymore damage is getting increased quite a bit. I think that the stack damage, again, it's like another 5% increase overall, but the pass damage going from 33% to 66%, I think, pass true, that's funny. I think that it's an okay change. I don't think, again, that it's going to warrant bringing Claymore to any like larger scale content, but the people who do use Claymore are probably going to like that change. Stone Skin on all plate helmets is now going to get immunity for purges. This is pretty good for small scale content. I'm not sure that there's very many other types of content that are going to use Stone Skin specifically for this, because Stone Skin doesn't really get used. Most of the time when you're using a plate helmet, you're using the ability that it comes with, right? Stone Skin usually does not. Maybe that's the reason that they're putting it on there. Face scale robe cooldowns getting increased. That makes sense. Face scale robe's already pretty expensive. I think that the cooldown increase is really just to help combat the fact that face scale robe is like the go-to for certain kite comps, and realistically it's an okay change. Cleric robe coming down 10 seconds. I'm not sure that that needs it, but okay, I'm okay for change for the sake of change, just to see what happens with that. It's like a 20% increase, or, well, decrease in cooldown. So it might affect some things, but I'm not really sure that it will. Fiend Robe, fear duration going from 1 to 2. It's okay, cool. I'm not mad at it. Fiend Robe does see some play in Hellgates, so I'm thinking maybe that's a pretty big change for people who do use Fiend Robe, but I don't think that it's used in ZVZ meta enough for me to know whether or not that's a significant change. So somebody who knows whether or not that change is significant, go ahead and leave a comment. Purging Shield on Mage Robe. I read this change. I was in... dude, this is... I can't have any words. Removed the resistance increase. Okay. Added defense to players 0 to 40%? Added defense versus mob 0 to 40% for 3 seconds? Bro, Spiked and Riftglaive are eating good. If you're the type of person that gets killed by Reflect, this new Mage Robe is going to be the bread and butter. And it just so happens to be cloth. This is an insane change in my opinion. I think that this is going to add a lot to Mage Robe in the meta, and I think it's still going to purge. It doesn't say that it isn't, so I think that that's outrageous. I think that that's almost too good. I think that that might have to be reeled in. Windwall Knight Armor is getting a little bit of a nerf. Honestly, thank God. I hate Knight Armor. It's one of the worst things in the game to play against. It's impossible to stop once it's started casting, other than just killing the person who used it. And if they get left behind, realistically, that just means they did their job, so to speak. I think that this is a welcome change for me specifically, just because I'm a Knight Armor hater. Mist Cloud on Mistwalker Jacket is going from 16% energy usage to 3.5% per second for 6 ticks total. Takes it from 16% to like 21% if my math is right. And honestly, I don't see that doing a lot if you're already not having mana problems. But for people who do need to manage their mana, that extra 5% mana or so will probably be noticeable in a longer term fight. But if you're not using your jacket like once or twice in a fight anyway, or more than once rather, twice or more in a fight, then realistically, I think that changes whatever. Um, Position swap for Fiend Sandals also is now going to add immunity to your allied target. That's pretty good, although I think 99.9% of the time, if you're using Fiend Sandals, you're using them on an enemy to gank them probably. So, yeah, okay, welcome change. Night Boots going from 18-second cooldown to 15-second cooldown. I am surprised, actually, at that change. Night Boots are already pretty good at doing their job. I think taking 3 seconds away from the cooldown, actually, huge W for Night Boots. I think that Night Boots are really good in small-scale content. Spectre Shoes going from 3% per tick to 2% per tick. It's weird that this is getting an energy cost per tick decrease, while the Mistwalker jacket is getting what I would call typically an increase from its overall energy cost usage. Just because I think that they want to mitigate the types of mana tick down stuff that exists in the game. It seems like a weird thing to talk about, so I digress. This is an okay change. I don't know that it really does a lot. It just makes it easier to manage your mana when you're using Spectre Shoes. Realistically, if you're using Spectre Shoes, there's only one of 2 different things that you could be doing, and one of them is Ava skips, which I don't care anyway. Mark of Sacrifice on Hellion Shoes is going from 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. That's going to make it pretty good for like one-shot builds. Not really sure that many other people are going to get the benefit out of that extra half a second, but one-shot builds definitely on the come up for that one. Smuggler Cape potion cooldown reduction is going from 90 seconds to 80 seconds. This is pretty small, but when paired with the healing potion cooldown going from 90 seconds to 105 seconds, it means that you can't healing potion back to back for extra HP. So the meta for potions is no longer going to be used to healing potions. It's probably going to be more in the neighborhood of used to poison potions if you're doing any kind of content with Smuggler's Cape that isn't just use gigs, right? Oh, I forgot about this. Oxes are getting huge buffs, giant buffs. The base speed, right, for Journeyman's Ox is going down. The gallop speed is going down. The weight is going up. The crowd control resistance coming down. This is going to happen all the way across the thing. But the weight going up for these things coming down only applies for the first couple tiers until you get to Master's Transport Ox, where it stays the same and the weight goes up. So huge buff. But then when you go above to tier 7 and tier 8, tier 7 is actually going to go faster now, and tier 8 is going to go 110% gallop speed with 3,200 kilograms carry weight. This is going to make Elder's Transport Oxes literally probably better for transporting than Elder's Bears. I wonder if this is a hint at them changing the faction mounts in the upcoming faction patch that's supposed to happen at the end of what I would call the depths cycle. I really hope that that's the case. I hope that this is a hinting at a change being coming for those mounts, because that's the one thing that mount does that's good, and it's just making this mount better. The extra 20% speed that this has or will have over the Elder's Bear at 3,200 kilograms is absolutely massive. Not quite as massive as these last 2 changes. And like I said, guys, these last 2 changes here are huge. Force dismount when dismounted by damage. If players have Disarray active and they don't get the cleanse and CC immunity on dismount anymore. That means that if you dismount inside of an enemy Zerg and you have Disarray, you're not going to get cleansed and CC immunity on dismount, which means you're going to get deleted immediately. You will just get stunned and pushed right out of the group, which is a welcome change in my opinion. I think that's really, really good for the game. Also, in Mists, if you get force dismounted by damage, with the same condition as the 15-second hostile dismount, if a player gets forcefully dismounted, they get a 50% damage and CC strength reduction for 10 seconds. Basically what that means is if there's already 2 people fighting and they're going at it and you get up into that and you try to get dismounted, you're going to do 50% less damage for the first 10 seconds that you're in that fight, meaning that it's going to be harder for rats to third party you in the Mists, which for Mist players is a pretty good change. I haven't seen anybody that is not a fan of that change that plays in Mists, because it's really hard to get into a fight in Mists and not get ratted by third party. That's the end of the changes, guys. That's the end of the post for the NDA balance playtest changes. If there's anything that I missed in this video, if you have any comments or if you need any help with anything, feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.